Okay, well, hello and welcome to today's webinar on intuitive eating for binge eating and emotional eating. In this workshop, you'll learn to repair your relationship with food and your body. So that's the goal for today. I'm Meredith McKenzie. I'm located in Vancouver, British Columbia, where I'm a clinical therapist, and I've worked for many years with women with eating disorders and emotional eating. And I'm going to share a little bit about my own experiences with intuitive eating. So let's dive in. Now, intuitive eating isn't quite as simple as the components I've listed out here, but in order for us to make it more tangible within our learning time today, I've broken down the method into three main areas. So today we're going to learn how to overcome your binge eating for good by first understanding why you binge. This includes putting a few pieces together: your life experiences and history with food, what personally triggers you, the meaning that you put on food and your personal biology, and the habits that you engage in. And how does that all contribute to why you binge eat? Next, we're going to talk about connecting with your body, because that's a very big part of overcoming binge eating. You're first going to want to develop your awareness of your hunger and fullness cues to reconnect with your body and what it's telling you. We're also going to talk about the emotional cues, which is the area that I think a lot of programs actually miss. And that's why a lot of the changes that you've tried to make in the past likely weren't really successful, even from the beginning, unfortunately, because there were multiple layers of what was really impacting your eating. And finally, we're going to talk about gentle nutrition and movement. It's a common misconception that intuitive eating is a free-for-all with food. So we're actually going to talk about how to nourish and care for your body in a place of respect. I am so excited that you're here today to learn about all of these really important aspects of what contributes to your binge eating and how you can stop it for good. This is going to be a value-packed webinar, so please turn off any distractions, be present, be here, and let's get into this. We first have to understand the binge eating cycle and why we get stuck in the cycle, going round and round over and over again, no matter how many changes we try to make. It comes down to three phases. The first is restriction. The second is engaging in binge eating. And then there is an aftermath phase. Now, it's really common to feel a whole range of emotions when you start the binge phase. First, you're experiencing the anticipation of eating and how exciting that is, the relief of finally having those feelings, or having that food that you've really been craving. And then oftentimes my clients will talk about feeling really detached from their bodies, from the experience that they're having, and almost feeling as though they're in a zombie-like mode. After the binge phase comes the aftermath phase, and that's usually when the repercussions or the gravity of what has just happened really hits you on an emotional level. You're likely to experience shame and guilt and just feel horrible that you have done this again, and really disappointed in yourself and crushed by how that all feels. Physically, you're also likely to feel pain and discomfort in your body because you've pushed your body beyond its limits. And the aftermath phase is the restriction. Aftermath phase comes after the restriction phase. And that's where you try to come to terms with what has happened and how you're going to make a change. It doesn't necessarily mean that you are restricting by limiting your food that you're eating, but it could also be a mental restriction, saying things like, I'm not ever going to do that again. I can't let those certain foods in my house again. I can't overeat. And really just promising yourself that you're not going to go back to this way of eating again. And it creates this all or nothing relationship with binge eating. Binge eating versus not binge eating. Oftentimes you will feel self-blame that this was your fault and you need to take responsibility to fix it. But you might also feel hope for a couple of days, weeks, or months when things have gone by without a binge. And you're thinking, yes, I've got this and I'm on top of it, until the binge eating phase happens again. Now, this is more my story too. Naturally you blame yourself. If it were simply a case of eating healthy and moving more, you'd already have mastered this. And I want to reassure you on that. The truth is, it's not as simple as just eating well and exercising well. You are not to blame for this. I used to be stuck in the loop too. Every time I would promise myself that I would cope differently next time, I tried different diet plans. I avoided keeping certain foods in the house. I even avoided social situations where I might overeat. And I would try to make up for what I was eating by engaging in more restriction. I felt embarrassed I felt ashamed and I felt hopeless about the whole thing. Now, intuitive eating unlocks the ability to truly attune to what your body needs. You're able to eat all foods without fearing that you're going to lose control. And you can create a new, respectful, caring relationship with your body. So settle in and stick around if you are a woman who struggles with binge eating, overeating, or emotional eating. If you want to feel calm and in control around food. If you're ready to make a lasting change to improve your relationship with food and your body and yourself. And if you want to feel confident in your food choices. Stick around if you recognize that dieting and restriction, although tempting, are not the answer to your eating difficulties. And you want to be able to trust your body's cues once and for all. Now, I'm going to invite you to leave this masterclass now if weight loss is your highest priority. Intuitive eating is a weight neutral approach that respects all bodies are different, and focusing on weight loss actually acts as a barrier to recovery. If you don't believe it's possible that your body can accurately give you hunger and fullness cues, then this might not be the right webinar for you. If you feel as though you want to make a change, but you're not prepared emotionally to commit to the new process, or if you're currently receiving eating disorder treatment from a professional team. I know you're gonna have lots of questions throughout this webinar, so stay until the end for a Q&A session. And before we dive into the strategies, here's a little history of what qualifies me to deliver this revolutionary anti-diet binge eating information. I was a master dieter. I firmly believed that I was doing the right thing, and you couldn't convince me otherwise. I say all this not to brag, but to explain that despite the fact that I had a lot going for myself, I was doing really well in a lot of areas of my life, I was totally consumed by the desire to fit to a specific body type, and those other things did not matter. And to add to it, the things that I was doing were celebrated and encouraged by other people around me. I sacrificed the joy in my life to restrict and over-exercise. So the photo that I have here is over 20 years old, but I distinctly remember this night and my decision to drink water all night because I didn't want to go over my calorie allotment. And I show this not to endorse alcohol consumption, but to show how strong disordered eating was for me, and that this was how my disorder prevented me from fully enjoying the event of that night. My restriction turned into compensation and eventually turned into binge eating. And you might relate to this, but I don't have many photos of myself from the time when my binge eating escalated because the shame I felt made me believe that I wasn't worthy of being photographed. So I have years of time with missed mementos due to my binge eating. I was feeling terrified and alone because nothing I was doing was working. So a few years later, I started my Master's of Counseling degree, or Master of Art in Counseling, and this launched me into my own recovery journey. This was a time of massive self-reflection for me, and I realized that my relationship with food was very problematic. I completed advanced training in eating disorder therapy and focused my practice on helping other women. Everyone's story is different, but my unique perspective of having overcome my own disordered eating past helped me to have a deeper level of understanding for the clients that I was working with. And I became employed with several community eating disorder programs, but I found that there was often a gap in the services for women with binge eating. Many of the programs that I worked with did not serve women with binge eating disorder, even though these women were deeply struggling. So I ended up discovering intuitive eating, and it answered every missing piece of the puzzle for me. I incorporated intuitive eating and emotion-focused therapy into my practice with clients. Each client flourished, and if anyone's curious, emotion-focused therapy is another therapy modality, and it fits very nicely with intuitive eating. Finally, there was an approach that fit for my clients who struggled with binge eating. And personally, I entered the most rewarding chapter of my life, and I credit it to my renewed relationship with my body for all of these things. I've enjoyed traveling and eating and moving without the stress of the disordered eating getting in my way. I've become a mother, and I'm a founder of Parallel Wellness Therapy Practice in British Columbia. So to get back to it, I started from my personal zero. Here is another water photo. And I believed that my happiness was just on the other side of that next diet. I'd get off track and I'd eventually binge. I felt like a failure, ashamed of myself, and hopeless that I'd ever get out of that hole that I'd created. which is why I am so passionate about sharing the tactics that helped me create a respectful relationship with food and my body, the tactics that truly changed my life. I began seeing my body as more than just a pretty shell, but as someone, my body was someone I wanted to take care of. I'm able to listen to the variety of cues that my body sends me and meet my own needs. And that's, not just hunger and fullness, but also emotionally. And I've addressed the contributing underlying emotional challenges. I've repaired my relationship with movement and I've found activities that I love. So if you're familiar with Vancouver, this is a picture of the CV's half marathon, something that I thought I could never do. And it was a really great reunion between me and my body to be able to run that half marathon. I'm conscious of how I'm engaging with friends, family, and my son. And I think it's been one of the biggest surprises and rewards that my relationships are more intimate and more genuine as a result of how I now relate to myself. Now, are you ready to stop binge eating? If you're watching, type ready in the comments below. By having my step-by-step strategies and guidance at your fingertips, imagine where you could be in 6 months to a year. Now, consider this webinar your fast pass. Step 1 is to understand why you binge. Binge eating is a result of both biological and emotional processes. So biologically, your blood sugar and insulin drop and set off a hormonal chain reaction that stimulates appetite and hunger, a certain delay after you've last eaten. Eating delicious food, such as high fat or high carb foods, causes the release of dopamine, another chemical that we have evolved to take as a way of seeking that out. It is something that feels really good for us. And so we seek out food that will give us that feeling again. This is especially true when you've deprived yourself, whether mentally or physically, and you haven't eaten in a while. Your body is wanting that dopamine. It's wanting that top up. Binging also serves to block out or numb your emotions. So a lot of people talk about boredom, stress, sadness, loneliness, anxiety, feelings of uncertainty, all things that trigger their binge eating. Eating also makes you feel good and gives you a sense of relief from whatever unpleasant emotion that you're currently experiencing. So it's not surprising why so many people saw an increase in their binge eating during the pandemic. You may have noticed that this is when you try to keep a specific binge food out of your house, you tend to fantasize about it and how to get it. And sometimes the urge to eat is so strong, you'll eat something else that doesn't give you nearly the satisfaction level, but you still feel out of control when you eat. When you try to suppress what your body really wants and needs, your drive to eat this food will only increase. Binge eating becomes our go-to way of coping, and it becomes a habit. So your environment will actually trigger you to start binging in a lot of situations. What makes it even more difficult is that what is thin is a totally arbitrary idea. And when we diet, we actually lose true sense of what we look like. Dieters commonly continually move their goal weight lower and lower as they approach it. And when you begin dieting, you essentially tell yourself that you can't be trusted, because if you could be trusted, then you wouldn't have been in the weight that you are unhappy with. And so you need to take some kind of external plan to tell you how to move and how to eat. Internally, though, your body does send you all kinds of cues for different reasons. These could be for hunger, for sleep, and emotional needs. And it's quite a miracle how attuned our bodies are to our environment, and that it lets us know what we need. Now, rather than listening to your body's cues, when you diet and you follow a meal plan or exercise plan that is aimed at depriving your body, which is really a calorie deficit, so that you can lose weight, and as you just learned, when you feel that you're deprived, your body actually interprets this as something going wrong and will do everything it can to try to get you to eat more. Essentially, your body turns the volume up and you continue to ignore the music that it's playing. You practice ignoring it over time and following this external plan instead. So it doesn't matter how loud your body tells you that it is hungry, you don't end up hearing those cues. Now, I've had clients say to me, well, if I don't diet, how am I going to, I don't diet, so that's not why I binge. That's not my problem. And that can be very true. And at the same time, you might be doing things that cause a mental restriction on you that does the same thing. You generally avoid eating carbohydrates. You describe your eating as good or bad, and you feel the need to justify why you've eaten something bad. You may tend to be all or nothing with your eating, and one bad meal can lead to a spiral of eating a whole bunch of bad meals. You try to limit your meals to specific portion sizes to avoid overeating. Or you might notice that you compare yourself to what other people are eating. Intuitive eating involves completely relearning what you know about food and your body and the way it all works. It's the scientific truth about the effects of dieting and restriction beyond binge eating. And you need to recognize, and this is part of intuitive eating in the process that you go through, that you may have been ingrained to believe these things about yourself and your body, and they're simply not true. And it takes time to undo this. Intuitive eating means challenging your diet mentality and the messages that are around you, grappling with that inherent fairness because the world is not made for people of all sizes, and that's incredibly unfortunate, and the fat phobia of the society that we live in. And it also involves creating a new worldview of yourself to see yourself in, the food that you eat, and your body. The second step in the process is to reconnect with your body by repairing your awareness for hunger, fullness, and emotional cues. When your body needs food, it'll try to send you cues to let you know that it needs food. But for various reasons, you may be desensitized to them and not receiving the clear message. Binge eating is often the result of disruption between the cues your body is sending you and your awareness of them. You eat when you don't feel hungry. You don't notice that you've eaten too much until you're uncomfortable. When you eat, it almost feels like you're not present or able to stop yourself. And you may also experience a disconnect with your emotional cues. Now, as I go through this slide, I want you to take a moment and consider what your body cue disruptors may be for you personally. Multitasking, skipping meals when you're tight on time, smoking or vaping, which suppresses your appetite, long periods of time without eating, being sleep deprived. Now, these are all food related, but there are also ways that we disrupt our emotional cues that you might not have realized are related to binge eating. And these include emotionally invalidating yourself, putting other people's needs before your own, not feeling comfortable asking for help, or having a hard time saying no. Intuitive eating is a practice of removing the disruptors and becoming attuned to your body's cues. You'll learn to identify your personal signs of hunger, to rate your hunger and respond to eating by eating accordingly, and to nourish yourself even when the cues aren't present because of a disruptor. Sometimes that'll look like a small snack. Other times, when you've let yourself go longer without a meal, you'll eat something more substantial. And you'll also learn to respond to the emotional cues that you have without food. And that's a big one. The focus is on honoring your genuine, true hunger. Now, this is a tool that I often use with my clients, and it appears to be simple, but I do want to kind of reassure you that if you're having a hard time with this, it is quite challenging if you haven't been attuned to your body's cues for quite some time. So take a moment and check in with yourself. Do you feel the sensations do you feel any sensations in your stomach? A rumbling, gurgling, gnawing, a sense of emptiness, or in your throat, a dull ache, a gnawing feeling? In your head, maybe cloudy thinking, lightheadedness, a headache, having difficulty focusing or concentrating, or maybe you're thinking more about food and eating. Do you notice that your mood is irritable or that you're cranky? Or maybe even if you're not showing it, that you're having a hard time holding back your snappiness, that your energy is low, sleepy, that you have a dullness to yourself, or you're just interested in doing anything, or do you more generally feel numb? So take a look at all of those things that are happening within your body, and then you can also rate your hunger on the scale of 1 through 10. And of course, it's going to change until you take that next meal, and then change again. Now, hunger can be tricky, especially when you live with disruptors. Your own customized nourishment self-care plan will be your scaffolding while you're figuring this out. And it's important to note, this is not a diet meal plan. This is not something that's meant to restrict you or keep you in a box or anything like that. So think of things that are easy to prepare and pick up, things that are appealing, you actually want to eat them, and things that will physically sustain you. So let's imagine you've had a busy day at work or you're running errands. It's been a few hours since you last ate. You finally have a moment to relax and you notice your hunger cues coming on. Emotionally, you're craving putting on the TV and just recovering from the stress of the day. Now, I want you to think about this for a moment. What meal or snack would fit this criteria of easy to prepare or something you just pick up, appealing, and will sustain you and is not a binge food. So when you're in the stress of the moment without a plan, you're likely to grab the closest appealing food item. And this might be the time that you would binge. But if you plan ahead of time, what would fit the scenario and meet the criteria for it to be easy, appealing, and sustaining? For me, it's oatmeal packets. Super easy. I can carry them with me anywhere. I can make them in a cup of hot water from a coffee shop if I'm in a pinch. And I enjoy the sweetness, and it satisfies me. What works for me won't necessarily work for you, though. So take some time to think of a few options and have them prepared. Also, when you know your hunger disruptors, you can be prepared for these with specific meals and snacks. So for me, that might be when I know that I'm running around running errands. I don't necessarily always notice my hunger because I'm busy, but then I know to take a break at some point. So finally, once you have practiced the other two steps that are, and you're thriving in those two steps, step 3 is to practice gentle nutrition and movement in a way that nourishes and cares for your body from a place of respect. If I allow myself to eat everything, I won't stop. This is a current concern for my clients who are new to the intuitive eating process, and it makes sense. Your experiences with eating your binge foods is that you totally lose control. Consider for me though, how is avoiding them going? Is it working? You already have the evidence that avoiding your trigger foods doesn't work long term. So take a leap of faith and trust in yourself. This will work. Overcoming binge eating is a process and a practice. Consider how many years it's taken you to actually get here. Investing in learning to respectfully nourish yourself takes time, but I promise you it is oh so worth it. Now, this is a poem by Portia Nelson that I always share with my clients because of how well it fits the experience of overcoming binge eating. And I'm going to read it for you. I walk down the street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I fall in. I'm lost. I'm helpless. It isn't my fault. It takes forever to find a way out. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I pretend I don't see it. I fall in again. I can't believe I'm in the same place, but it isn't my fault. It still takes me a long time to get out. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I see it there. I still fall in. It's a habit. My eyes are open. I know where I am. It is my fault. I'm not pro shame, but this is the poem. I get out immediately. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I walk around it. I walk down another street. Now, throughout this process, you will likely fall into the hole in your sidewalk a few times, but each time you learn something new and it makes it easier for you to get out, and eventually you walk down a new path as an intuitive eater. When your brain is no longer preoccupied with food, you'll have way more space to explore food without guilt. So it becomes very different as you're exploring nutrition at that point. Food does not have a moral value. There is no good or bad foods. And your improved body awareness will help you to attune to how the foods you're eating cause your body to feel. This helps you to move beyond your taste buds and into the binge eating cycle drive for instant nourishment and that panic feeling that you might have. And your why expands from including more than just the reasons that diet culture would tell you about. So you'll start to make choices based on the energy and stamina that food gives you, wanting to nourish yourself with different nutrients to meet other life goals, like if you are physically active or if you're pregnant, or all the different reasons that your body might need additional nourishment. And you'll find that you avoid certain foods solely because they don't feel well in your body, not because they're bad for you or that you believe that they're bad for you. Believe it or not, you will start to crave vegetables. Now, play foods are foods you crave where the main nutritional value is energy. And as an intuitive eater, you will begin to crave a variety of foods and nutrients, and you'll balance your intake of play foods. Reflect on your emotional relationship that you have with these play foods, because there's positive situations or even emotionally difficult situations where we might want to have some of these play foods. And I want you to continue to meet your emotional needs first. Continue to attune to the cues your body sends you and dig deeper into your foundational principles when you eat beyond your comfort. Now, consider your existing relationship with exercise and what has led to this. Again, many of us succumb to externalized cues for exercise that have robbed us of finding any joy in it. You're either completely avoiding exercise because it's just overwhelming, or you're militant in your approach, focusing on calories burned or minutes or the distance that you've moved. So first, just focus on sitting less. That's all. Stretch while you're sitting, bend, get up and walk around. Maybe even set a timer to remind yourself to get up and move. And I want you to recognize that sometimes the life events that lead you to be sedentary are also impacting you emotionally. So stress or heavy workload, and consider that something in this area of your life may need to change. What forms of movement do you actually enjoy? And then listen to your body. What rejuvenates you, helps you feel connected to your body, alleviates stress that you're experiencing, is fun. And when you notice the urge to do more of that particular exercise because you think, but you really should slow down, and consider what is motivating this. Now, because of my role as a clinical therapist with my one-on-one clients, I am not able to share any personal information about my clients, but I do have permission from them to share some of their successes with intuitive eating. So please note that I'm not using real client names or photos. Sarah struggled for several years with binge eating at night during a long work day, after a long work day. And she tried several diets. She pumped herself up to do everything right and then would cave and eat multiple bowls of cereal after dinner. She felt overwhelmed and defeated, and she couldn't figure out how to eat consistently. Finally, when we started to work together, she started learning the triggers for her binges, and she began managing her emotions with the tools that I shared with her. And she finally addressed the real reason she was binging. So today, Sarah is confident about eating what she likes without binging, and she's able to eat a variety of foods without feeling sucked into overeating. She doesn't restrict herself anymore, and she's able to enjoy all social events without dread, without looking up the menu before she goes out. Now, Margaret dreaded every family gathering. She'd feel the urge to binge slowly increase from the moment the event started, and then she would drive to the store afterwards and buy binge foods on her way home and eat them privately in the secrecy of her own home. The shame that she felt was absolutely crushing. And today, she's able to manage her emotions and stop binging before it happens. We worked on many strategies to help her develop a plan for family gatherings, and she's no longer dreads them, which is amazing for her. Until now, only my one-on-one clients like Sarah and Margaret were able to benefit from my comprehensive approach to using intuitive eating to overcome binge eating. And I've personally implemented these strategies myself. I've worked with hundreds of clients, and these strategies are backed by scientific research that is growing by the day. So I invite you to email me for research if you're interested so that we can nerd out together. At this point, I know I can make a greater impact by sharing it with more people, which is why I have limited my work with individual clients so that I can work more intimately with a small group of motivated women. So if you're thinking, I'm ready, where do I start? All you have to do is commit, focus, and take action, which you've already done really by taking the time to take this masterclass today. I just gave you my intuitive eating for binge eating strategy, but as I'm sure you can imagine, this is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to repairing your relationship with food in your body, addressing your emotional triggers, and nourishing and moving your body in a genuinely self-caring way. So you have two options: continue on your own or take the proven path. If you decide to work with me, nothing is held back. You will have a comprehensive step-by-step plan to overcome your binge eating. My true passion is helping women connect with themselves in a way that they deserve, to forgive themselves, to find peace with their relationship with their bodies and food. And you'll have me as your guide every step of the way. And that's what my One Body to Love program includes. I have taken the entire intuitive eating process from start to finish in addressing your reasons for binging, challenging long-ingrained beliefs, developing attunement for your body's cues, planning to prevent binges, and incorporating gentle nutrition and movement into your life, and put it all into this program. Now, the biggest issue I see women who I know is in their core that they're having a better relationship with their body would be to help them stop binging, and yet they don't have the support to implement all of these steps on their own. So they could use a workbook on intuitive eating, but it isn't helpful if you use it for a few weeks and then life goes back to normal. And there's tons of options out there from influencers and everybody on social media, and it isn't going to work long term if it's based on reducing your portions. And honestly, they're not proven by science. You know you're smart. You know how to eat nutritiously and exercise, but this alone hasn't worked because you need a more in-depth approach. Now, I want you to have the best possible environment and support to begin and master your intuitive eating journey because I've been through it and I'm coming at this with years of experience, experimenting and finding things that actually work long term. This is a unique opportunity to address all facets of your eating concerns: emotional, physical, habitual, and psychological. This program is designed to be the last approach you'll ever need. I'm fostering an intimate, supportive community for women, and I'm looking for just the right group of women to join me. Maybe you want to join me. Here's how the process works. This program is for women who feel out of control with food. You are aware that there is more to your eating challenges than simply being knowledgeable about nutrition and exercise. You want to have a respectful and caring relationship with your body, and you're ready to at least put dieting on pause for now. I'm not saying you're never going to want to diet again or that those thoughts aren't going to creep in, but for the time being, you're willing to pause it. And you are motivated to actively engage in the strategies that I'll be teaching you. If this sounds like you, you're invited to book a call with me and enroll in the One Body to Love program. I've set aside time in the next week to talk to you and see if I can help. The call will be approximately 45 minutes, and the intention is to understand your relationship with food and your body and identify how and if we are a fit to work together. Book your call with me now using the QR code in the slide here or by clicking the link in the description box below. There are a limited number of spaces available because I'm only one person, and the program is already half filled for October 19th start date, which is 2 Wednesdays from now. So book now to secure your spot. Here is what I know to be true. I would have the connected relationship with my body, or I would not have had the connected relationship with my body and food freedom that I have today if it wasn't for challenging myself to begin my intuitive eating journey. So where do you want to be a year from now? Book your call with me now. Now let's dive into your questions. I will take any questions that come into the chat.